It is extraordinary that we are meeting here today. It is an extraordinary measure to recall the parliament in the way that this government has done. As we've just heard, in the last 55 years, parliament has been prorogued for a new session on only 4 occasions. 2 of those were to allow the Queen to open the parliament. The other occasion was after the disappearance of Prime Minister Harold Holt in 1967, and in 1969 we had an occasion where, immediately after an election, a prorogation occurred to allow the parliament to sit for a day before Christmas. So it is extraordinary that we are here today with the express intent to give the government a double dissolution trigger to take us to an election. It highlights that there is nothing conservative about this government. This is indeed a radical decision taken by an extreme government to invoke those extraordinary constitutional powers. This is a radical action taken by an extreme government. The fact that they're willing to go to these extraordinary measures, to have the Governor-General recall the Senate and demand that we pass the Australian Building and Construction Commission bills, it tells us that their #1 priority isn't innovation, it's not bringing us into a new economy, it's not tackling climate change and the loss of the Great Barrier Reef, the jobs that are going because we've got inaction in managing that transition to a new economy. Their #1 priority is their own survival. That is why we are here today, because nothing brings the coalition together more than a bit of good old-fashioned union bashing. You see, this is a divided party. It's a party where you have a Prime Minister who says he's not prepared to lead a government that isn't as committed to climate change as he is, and yet here he is in Paris spruiking those shameful emissions targets that Tony Abbott took us to. It's a party that's divided on the issue of prejudice and discrimination in marriage. Again, the Prime Minister, at least rhetorically, says he's a strong supporter of marriage equality. And yet, what does he do? He goes to his friends, those extremists, those radical right-wingers inside the coalition, and says, yes, we'll conduct an inquiry into a Safe Schools program, a program designed to keep young kids safe from bullying in schools. We've got the spectre of the Royal Commission, where we've got some members of the coalition saying, we support a Royal Commission, we support the Greens in their long-held view that this is a scandal, and we will cross the floor in order to ensure it happens. You see, this is done not in the national interest, this is done in the Prime Minister's narrow self-interest. The only way he can get a mandate from his own party to bring them together, to bring those extreme elements into the tent, is to engage in a bit of good old-fashioned union bashing, because nothing brings the coalition together like a bit of old-fashioned union bashing. You see, he has lacked the courage to take on those people within his party room, and rather than doing what good Prime Ministers do, and that is to unite the nation, he's taking action to unite his party room but to divide the nation, to his great shame. And that's why he's losing support. That is exactly why he's losing support right now. He at one stage said that John Howard was the Prime Minister that broke the nation's heart. Well, he is the Prime Minister right now that is breaking the nation's heart because he hasn't got the courage to take on those right-wingers inside his own party room, to take a stand on global warming, to take a stand on ending discrimination in marriage, to take a stand on ending corruption wherever it exists, including within the finance and banking sector. You see, these bills, the bills directed against the ABCC, they're not aimed at ending corruption. They're not central to our economic future, as the government suggests. They're just a good old-fashioned attack on the rights of ordinary working people. That's what they are. And there are existing powers, should the government want to use them, to take action against anybody it suspects is engaging in illegal activity. And the Attorney-General was absolutely right when he said there is no difference between a dodgy boss and a dodgy union official. So my question to the Attorney-General is this: why support a Royal Commission into unions when you won't support one into the banking and finance sector. If both those people are to be treated equally, then why not have a Royal Commission into both? Otherwise, your words are pure hypocrisy. We have a government that is stuck in the past, that's fighting the battles of the last century, an old battle of bosses versus workers where it's always going to take the sides of the bosses. And people are tired of it. They are tired of the old merry-go-round, the paint's peeling, the music's jaded. They know this isn't central to Australia's economic interests. They know that Australia's great challenge right now in the 21st century is to ensure that we start breaking that nexus with those old polluting industries of the past, that old thinking, those old political parties who don't understand that we are in a climate emergency that requires an urgent response and will allow us to take advantage of those economic opportunities that will create jobs and investment for the generations to come. How we manage that challenge, not this sideshow, is the true test of any government. There have been some big changes over recent decades. We're seeing that productivity and prosperity for everyday Australians are no longer linked in the same way that they once were. Productivity is increasing off the charts in some areas, yet wage growth remains flat. We're seeing the rivers of gold that flowed during the mining and property booms. What did they do? They helped the rich to get richer. We saw those big income tax under the Howard government, which were biased towards those people with great wealth. And we know that as the inequality increases, that provides a huge drag on our economy. This is not only a moral issue, a question of justice, it's also an economic issue. If you are worried about economic productivity, let's not engage in a witch hunt against the union movement. Let's listen to the IMF, who tell us that as inequality increases, productivity decreases. It is a drag on our economy. And yet we're experiencing scandals from the major banks within the finance sector. We've seen tax avoidance on an enormous scale, taking money out of schools and hospitals, people suffering congestion in our capital cities because we've got governments who refuse to invest in public transport. We only saw just recently the Prime Minister who promised he would be the Prime Minister for sustainable cities, the Prime Minister who likes taking selfies of himself while catching a bus or a train. Plough more money into those polluting road projects in Victoria and in Western Australia. And of course, we all know too well those dodgy dealings in political donations, that old vested interests are still dictating the terms of public policy when it comes to tax policy, investment, industrial relations policy, climate policy. Our political system is broken until the toxic influence of donations is removed. Big money politics is a cancer on our democracy, and it's why we will be reintroducing our legislation to install a national anti-corruption watchdog, and it's why we're so pleased that Senator Lazarus and indeed many of the crossbenchers also support that call, as do Australians right around the country. Yet while we're having this phony debate, right through the property boom, the mining boom, we're seeing global temperatures increase, the hottest day on record, the hottest month on record, the hottest year on record, and the records keep getting broken day in, day out. We're seeing those fires, some of them unprecedented, year on year. The major coral bleaching event that threatens that wonderful natural asset that is the Great Barrier Reef, threatening the incredible biodiversity that lives within it, a world like no other that we are committing to death, and threatening those jobs, those more than 60,000 jobs that depend on its survival. So yes, Mr President, we need reform. We should be back here urgently, but not to debate and attack on the rights of working people. That's not why we should be here. We should be here talking about how we unlock the potential of a new economy, how we ensure we redirect investment to those areas that we know are productive, away from the old polluting industries that won't be the pathway to Australia's future prosperity. The problem is we have two old parties stuck in the past We've got change being held back by vested interests, maintaining the status quo for their own narrow gains. And we've got ordinary Australians being cheated out of a more sustainable and fairer Australia, one where the planet's warming and all this government can do is go to the old handbook, let's attack the unions and let's engage in a battle that belongs in the last century, not in this one. No, Mr President, we need some courage and vision in politics, and the Greens stand prepared at this election to show the Australian nation that we can be better than this.